Hello, welcome to La Excellence. Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis. Today we have 13 important articles. The first article is with regard to cyclone Nivar. This article can be approached from two subjects. One from geography. From the subject of geography, we need to know what is this cyclone and who has given the name Nivar and how cyclone impacts us. And from disaster management, this is one of the very important areas. From the disaster management, we need to understand how to manage the disaster, in this case, the cyclone. How to manage, what are the measures that we should take? In this case, do we have any mitigational measures with regard to cyclones? These things we need to read. For now, in today's session, we will understand from the geography perspective, but you need to read this from our disaster management perspective also. I will give you a brief idea over it, but you need to go through your disaster management book and read about cyclones. First, let us understand how tropical cyclones are formed and what are the categories of tropical cyclones and how tropical cyclones impacts us. Right. Tropical cyclones, what are the general conditions? The surface water at least up to the depth of 60 meters should be minimum 26 degrees. And then there should be low pressure at the center, low pressure center. And then we call this as wind shear. Wind shear, vertical wind shear should be very less. 1. Temperature. 2. Low pressure. 3. Vertical wind pressure difference. Shear means difference. So wind pressure difference should be very less. And we should know one fact. What is that? Cyclones, especially the tropical cyclones, they don't form near the equator. 5 degrees north and south of equator, we don't experience any tropical cyclones. Why? Why? Because Coriolis force, very important word, Coriolis force over here is comparatively near to zero. Because of that, near equator, tropical cyclones doesn't form. Now let us see what are the different names that we call various tropical storms around the world. In the Indian Ocean, we call them as cyclones. In the Atlantic Ocean, we call them as hurricanes. In the Pacific Ocean, we call them as typhoons. Typhoons. In the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, hurricanes. Indian Ocean, cyclones. These are various names that we give to our tropical storms. And based on the wind speed, there is this particular scale called Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. This scale divides the cyclones into various types, 5 categories, based on the wind speed per kilometer per hour. So now this cyclone Niva has become a severe cyclone. Right, okay, cyclones form. As we know, cyclones require continuous source of water. Cyclones have a low pressure zone in between, that is in the middle of the cyclone there is a low pressure zone, we call it as eye of a cyclone, and then surrounding it there are bands of clouds, especially the cumulonimbus clouds rotating around, and cyclones in the northern hemisphere move from east to west. Northern hemisphere east to west, southern hemisphere west to east. In southern hemisphere, cyclones move from east to west, and northern hemisphere east to west. That is very important thing. So we are in northern hemisphere. So the cyclones that forms over Bay of Bengal, they move towards the Indian Peninsula region. So in that context, this particular cyclone that is formed now over the Bay of Bengal, it is moving towards Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, which is causing a lot of damage. By the way, who has named it? Why are we calling it as Nivar? Let's understand that. Let's understand who gives the names to cyclones. We have World Meteorological Organization. So this is international organization, and region-wise, wherever cyclones are originated, especially the tropical cyclones, regional groups are there. For example, we are in Northern Indian Ocean region. So Northern Indian Ocean region countries. There are 13 countries that are listed. 13 countries that are listed: Bangladesh, India, Iran, Maldives, Myanmar, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, UAE, Yemen. These are the 13 countries in this particular group. These countries, they provide a list list of names, and we arrange this particular WMO arrange these list of names in alphabetical order. See, Bangladesh, so first India, Iran, Maldives, countries are arranged in alphabetical order, and they will be asked to give a list of names. In this case, each country is asked to provide 13 names. And whenever a cyclone occurs in that particular northern Indian Ocean region, they give the names alphabetical order, countries alphabetical order wise. They have given the name Nisarga already, they have given the name Gati. Now this particular cyclone has come up, that's why the name Nivar. Nivar. Now, if there is a question on who has given the particular name under this particular Indian Ocean region, so we say that it's Iran. Iran in the northern Indian Ocean region, this name is proposed by, Nivar is proposed by Iran. So why do we give names, by the way? For proper coordination, for better awareness, etc., we provide the names, and to want to trace, so what was the impact of the past cyclone, and if we want to compare it with the present one, we need to identify them specifically. For that particular purpose, we generally provide them names. So if we provide them with the common names, even the common people generally tend to remember them, and it becomes very easy to generate awareness and early warning. That is why we give names to these tropical cyclones. Now tell me, so what are the impacts of these tropical cyclones? How do we reduce them? Can you do work on it? So please work on it. What are the impacts of cyclones? What is National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project? What is this NDRF that the article is talking about? So you just open your disaster management book, either textbook or notebook, whatever. Read about cyclone chapter. This is going to be your opportunity. Whenever a particular topic comes up in your news article, read that particular chapter or concept from that subject. That way, you will consolidate your current affairs as well as your static subject. Very important technique. Whenever you get any current issue, go to your static book and read on it. The next article is about banning certain websites, banning 43 more mobile apps by the government. Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, has recently proposed for banning 43 more apps in the name of digital security. This ministry has said that, see, these apps are violating the digital security. So under section 69A of Information Technology Act, blocking of undesirable apps, applications, websites is allowed by the government. So in such context, so the ministry has proposed to ban 43 more apps. Majority of them are from China. See, already we have banned many apps, 59 apps. At one point, 118 apps were banned at one point. So there were many apps that were banned recently. It is based on the reports received from the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center under Ministry of Home Affairs. Based on these reports, we have banned them. Now, what is this section 69A of Information Technology Act? This is very important section. Last time when we were reading about Shreya Singhal case with regard to Kerala Police Act amendment, so we were reading about 66A. Yes or no? In yesterday's session, we have seen it. 66A, section 66A of IT Act. In Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case, this particular provision of IT Act was held unconstitutional. But this particular one, section 69A, was also challenged in the same case, but then Supreme Court upheld it. Supreme Court said, no, it is constitutional. There is no need to remove it. So what does this Article 69A does? It can ask the intermediaries to remove certain content which is objectionable. It provides the procedures and safeguards to block or to remove the content from different online sources, online platforms. That's about section 69A. Recently, who have banned these apps? Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, under which provision? Under section 69A of IT Act. The next article is with regard to vaccine distribution. Recently, our Prime Minister has said that we need to have a steering committee and we need to coordinate at the local level so that when the vaccine gets developed, it should reach everyone. In case of vaccine distribution, we should all be prepared. Every state, every district, every block, every village should be prepared. For that particular purpose, so government has appointed a steering committee to look after this entire process. So what is it? Is the vaccine available? No. As of now, it's not available, but we are expecting the functional vaccine in next 4 months. So for that particular purpose, we should be prepared from now. That is why. By the way, what are the steps in vaccine development and distribution? First, we analyze the particular virus, and then we go for, and then vaccine is developed, a chemical component. Vaccine is developed, then animal trials, third stage, and then human trials. Finally, the regulator gives the approval. In this case, we have different regulator. These are, one is European regulator, second one is USA regulator. But we have our own regulator. So that regulator gives the final approval, and then it goes for mass production. Finally, distribution. These are the 6 stages in general we have in the vaccine development. But what are the concerns and what are the issues with regard to vaccine distribution? While developing it, there are many concerns. So, time concerns, research concerns, there are many. But once the vaccine, effective vaccine is developed, what are the other concerns? These are distribution related concerns. So, how do we distribute them to all people? That's the concern. Who should be given the priority? Because the company cannot produce the vaccines at a time for everyone. So, batch wise, they produce, and then it takes time to reach to everyone. So, in such context, who should be given the first preference? Let's say if there is an ethics case study given to you. So, you are the district in charge for the medical in that particular district. So, the vaccine is developed, and government has instructed you that prepare a manual according to which vaccine distribution should happen. So, what are the principles that you follow? Let's say if that is the question, ethics question, how do you answer? Please think on it. If possible, write the answer in the comment section. Okay, let's see. What are the principles or what are the concerns with regard to distribution of vaccines? So recently, WHO, it has a COVAX finance group. It said that when this particular vaccine is developed, we should have a plan, phase-wise plan, wherein in the stage 1, 3% of population, especially the high exposing groups to the virus, healthcare workers, social care workers, they should be given the priority. First, they should be given the vaccine. After that, 20% of population who are over 65 years or high risk, that is comorbidity, any kind of other disease. So they should be provided with the vaccine. And then finally, other population, further priority groups should be given the vaccine. Likewise, stage wise, we should reach the people, because manufacturing the vaccines at a time for all people is not possible. That is why we should have a phased plan. But what are the concerns in COVID vaccine distribution? One, funding. So there are many research companies which have spent a lot of money to fast track this particular vaccine development process. So in that case, it might cost more. Vaccine might cost more. So will that impact the vaccine distribution? Let's say I don't have money and you have money, and the particular vaccine costs, let's say, 10,000 rupees. Who will get it? As you have money, you will get it. I don't have money, I won't get it. So funding concerns are there. Racial ethnic disparities are there. Supply chain. There are certain vaccines which needs to be placed in the ultra cold temperatures. So supply chain and logistics, in such context, that becomes a difficulty. Communication and trust. There are certain people who believe that vaccines are bad and vaccines in turn can lead to the disease. So how do we communicate to them? How do we persuade them to go for the vaccines? That's again a concern. Next, coverage and cost. How many people are covered at what cost? So that is going to be a concern. And coordination here. Center, state and local governments, the coordination between them is going to be a concern. So these are all the key issues that needs to be streamlined, or these needs to be coordinated at each stage for proper, effective, efficient distribution of vaccine. Very important. Next is diplomatic offensive. This is regarding our international relations. Here it simply says that India has done good by highlighting the terror activity of Pakistan. Recently, what has happened? So there was a fight between terrorists and our security forces. Four of the terrorists have died, and we try to trace the place from where they have come, and we have discovered a tunnel. Then we also proved that the mobile phones that these people they have used, the clothing, the documents that they all are proving that they have come from Pakistan. So that way we try to highlight it. And our foreign secretary has briefed about this particular incident and the grouping to the various ambassadors of various countries. That way we try to highlight that, see, these are the areas, especially the border areas, where we are experiencing cross border terrorism from Pakistan. So let's put pressure on this particular country. So that way we are putting pressure from multiple sources, multi pronged strategy. Right? This is one of the important issues. So highlighting it at the diplomatic level is a good thing. That is what is the gist of this particular article. Next article is with regard to the internal working group's recommendation on allowing the corporates into the banking sector. There's one more article regarding the same issue. Yes, this is the one. Say no to corporate houses in the Indian banking. So this is also related to that particular article only. Now, yesterday we have discussed about what are the recommendations by PK Mohanty committee, or we formally call it as internal working group of RBI. They have recommended for many things, and one important thing is corporate houses. What is the meaning of private business and corporate? Many people have this doubt. What is the meaning of it? In generally, corporate houses are bigger. These are private only, but bigger compared to other ones. So that's why corporate houses. So these corporate houses, what are the problems that they are facing? Already, whenever they have money, they are over leveraging it. That means if they have 100 rupees money, they are borrowing more and spending 120 rupees to expand their business or for many other purposes. So in such cases, whenever they have money, they are trying to spend more by borrowing or some other way. But a bank should follow the conservative method. Yes or no? A bank should place certain percentage of money with it, certain percentage of money with RBI, should comply with many things. And corporate houses, if they have multiple multiple businesses, let's say Tata Group, it has multiple businesses from salt to tractor, many are there. So in such cases, confusion of inflow of and outflow of funding might happen if we allow. And over leveraging like this, overspending or over leveraging like this might cause harm in the long term. So even if we don't allow corporate houses directly, but if we allow the privatization of public banks, so that also encourages and that also leads to more money from the corporate sector. But specifically allowing corporate houses to set up the banks, that might lead to a bad experience. That's what this article is trying to tell us. Yesterday also we discussed why, and this article also this is the thing. So they are saying corporate houses, as they require money, it can lead to connected lending. Connected lending means, so the bank lends money because you are the promoter of that particular company, bank. So connected lending can lead to a bad precedent in Indian banking sector. Already it is there. Connected lending also means a political leader that you know, because of his recommendation you have got the loan. So that's called connected lending. So connected lending is there, but directly allowing the corporate housing explicitly promotes connected lending. In such cases, as of now, our banking system is not ready for encouraging corporate houses into the Indian banking system. Though the working group has recommended the recommendation, this is not an idea. This is not a new idea. This was there already in 2013 also. The same thing was proposed by the RBI. So it's not a new one. And there's a question of RBI's credibility or regulators' credibility. There are multiple businesses of this particular corporate company, and incoming money and overall maintaining the books value, everything that can become clumsy. In case if there is any failure on part of the bank, that can lead to a bad impression over the entire corporate sector. That is why as of now, please don't go for it. That's the article here says. Yesterday also we read a particular article wherein Raghuram Rajan and Viral Acharya were talking about this only. So they also doesn't want the Indian banking system to be steered or to be held by the corporate houses. The next article is with regard to social justice. This is regarding the migrant crisis and the situation after that. See what has happened suddenly. We announced the lockdown. Millions of workers, especially the migrant workers. So they don't have work now, and they can't stay in the city without any work because they need to pay rents. There are many expenses. So without work, they can't stay. Now they want to go back to their villages or from wherever places they have come. But there was no transportation mechanism at the time. Transportation system was shut down. So many people started walking. So you might have seen the photographs of small children walking, even the elderly, above 60, people walking along the highways, railways. Some people died. Yes or no? You might have remember all these things. Now, see, why are we excluding migrants? Why are we excluding migrants from our imagination, especially with respect to policy? See, after that, in Parliament, few members have asked what's the status of migrant crisis. Then what is the answer of government? We don't have numbers. We don't know how many people have migrated, how many people have stayed back, but we are providing free rations, etc. The government has answered. But what are the real issues? There's a sense of non-existence, right? This is very important. There's sense of non-existence. Suddenly, you don't have anything that you are living there. You were working there earlier, but you don't have anything now. So that sense of nothing, sense of feeling left out, that grows, right? That grows. That is going to be a problem for the economy if the migrants are not willing to come back. But sadly, our rural position is also like that only. People are coming back to the urban areas again for the work. In such context, what is the government's responsibility? Migrants are an asset, especially for the economy of the state or the particular region. Migrants are an asset, especially the skilled migrants are an asset. So, government should consider that. Government should propose good labor laws, good social security. So, all these things should be there. For that particular purpose, already labor reforms were undertaken. House construction in the urban areas has been promised. Under Pradhana Mantri Garibi Kalyan Anna Yojana, free rations are being provided or subsidized rations are being provided. Likewise, we are taking the measures, but migrants and migration related policy is the need of the hour. We need to have a comprehensive policy over migration and migrants. So, migration and migrant related policy helps us. Yes or no? So millions of people migrate for studies, for employment, etc. Millions of people migrate in a single year in India. The next article is with regard to permanent commission of women in the army. See what has happened earlier? Permanent commission for women officers was not there. Was not there. So they were recruited for short service, that is 15 years. But then based on the Supreme Court's judgment, government has allowed the permanent commission of women officers in the Indian army. And then they have conducted certain tests. They said only 422 people out of 615 are fit for permanent commission. But then the people, the women of this particular wing of defense forces have approached the Supreme Court saying that, see, the government is telling us about 422 posts, but then in reality only 272 or less number of posts are granted through permanent commissioning. So they allege that this is the violation of Supreme Court judgment. This is the violation of equality of rights. So that's why this should be addressed. That's the issue over here. Less than 50% women benefited due to the permanent commissioning. Recently, we have permanently commissioned people into the women into two other defense forces also. This is a very important article, Poshan Abhiyan. There is a Niti Aayog's study paper that said that Poshan Abhiyan program needs to be upgraded. What is it then? Earlier, Niti Aayog has proposed and submitted a paper on National Nutrition Strategy. Based on this National Nutrition Strategy, the Government of India has designed a National Nutrition Mission. Under this National Nutrition Mission, this particular one, the National Nutrition Mission is also called as Poshan Abhiyan. This entire strategy is being prepared by Niti Aayog. But now, after the implementation of this Poshan Abhiyan for 3 years, Niti Aayog says that whatever the goals that we have set under National Nutrition Mission, these are lesser goals. But still, we were unable to improve upon them. Remember, they have set up few goals from 2017 to 2022. Under this Poshan Abhiyan, government wanted to achieve certain goals. But then it is said that under this particular Poshan Abhiyan, the goals whatever are set under this particular mission are short term and these are not as comprehensive as suggested by WHO. As of now, we have set them up, but implementation of them is also half-hearted, or we can say that implementation and reaching these goals has also become a difficulty now. By 2022, we might not achieve the goals that we have set under our National Nutrition Mission. So let's understand what are these goals and what are the issues with regard to this. What are the national targets under Poshan Abhiyan or National Nutrition Mission? So there are 3 targets. Underweight children below 5 years. They should be reduced from 35% to 20%. Prevalence of anemia among children should be reduced from 58% to 19%. Prevalence of anemia in girls and women, that should be reduced from 53 to 17%. And then by 2019, these are the stats of 2019. By 2019, every 2 women is anemic in India. Once in every 3 child is stunted. Stunted means less height for his age. Then malnourished, then wasted, less weight for the body mass. And then infant mortality rate is 37. Maternity mortality rate is 167. These needs to be addressed. We don't have funding issues, but we need to improve the standardization. We need to coordinate in a better way, right? So priority should be our malnutrition. So local target should be fixed. Local initiative should be taken. And then data. Data is collected on a 10-year gap. So that's why we can say that whatever data that we have collected is relevant 5 years back, but not now. And monitoring systems are not there. We are giving, yes, this state has achieved this much, this state has achieved this much. But continuous monitoring systems are not there. In that context, as of now, children under 5 years who are stunted, their ratio has reduced, but not much. 5 years who are wasted, that means less weight, that has not changed much. Under 5 children who are severely wasted, so their number increased. Under 5 children who are underweight, their number decreased. But overall, nutrition gaps are still there because of lack of prioritization, because of lack of data, because of improper monitoring systems. But this kind of national nutrition mission started generating awareness among the people that we can consider it as an important step. In this case, we need to understand what are the measures that are already taken by the government to promote this particular national nutrition mission, or what else needs to be done, that is way forward. We know the facts now. What are the issues? We need to know what are the pros and cons, especially what are the achievements in this then. What are the areas where we are lagging behind? So we need to know about them and we need to write the way forward. What should we do? That is called as way forward. Our final article is with regard to USA's troops withdrawing from Afghanistan. What happens there? If USA withdraws from Afghanistan, what happens? Yesterday also we were discussing one article on drone technology. We said in Afghanistan, Taliban are looking for drone bombers and drone bombing technology. So in such context, so what can we do possibly? What can we possibly do? That is the question. And what are the impacts of this particular policy on Afghanistan? Again, that's an important question. Right. So how do we approach it? In yesterday's class itself, we said that USA and Taliban as a group in Afghanistan, so they went on for Doha peace talks. Now, in case if now already USA is planning to move out of the Afghanistan, so what happens then? Can Taliban's power strengthen? Yes or no? If there is any if there is any lack of consensus in the Afghan society, will they be accepted? That is, will the Taliban be accepted? No. Can that cause security harm to us? Yes. As of now, USA forces are there, but now Afghanistani forces will be there. So that can cause a security threat to us. And this is the uncertainty period wherein we should not take such decisions quickly. But USA is taking that decision very quickly and it wants all the people and material to come back to USA. Because of that, USA is moving out of Afghanistan. It has repercussions within the country, that is within Afghanistan and outside the country with neighboring countries like India. How? Can that pose a security threat, especially near LOC? Yes or no? Yes. So, before USA leaving Afghanistan, they should set in the process correctly. Then only with responsibility it should move back. It has come as a war. It should settle down the people and the political systems. It has destroyed whatever were there. Now, it's the responsibility of USA and its NATO allies to set this up. This is about today's session. Tomorrow, RB sir will take the session. Thank you very much. All the very best.